we're not taught to communicate as men. It's more of an anthropological story. Is if you go back in time, we haven't changed much. But back then, if you were in more of a tribal situation, the men would go out and hunt. So if you and I, Tim, were going out to hunt the woolly mammoth, what we do is we just make hand signals like, hey, We'd make grunts and small noises, one-word answers. So we didn't scare off the prey, so we could bring home the meat to the family so everybody could survive. The theory is men have evolved this way to communicate in very short, blunt reasons. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. We are back. Today we're going to talk about effective ways to communicate with your partner. So I know this sounds like a boring one, but stick to the end because I know we're going to get some nuggets. One of the top complaints women have is their men don't listen and or don't communicate, right? So how do you do that effectively as a man so that your woman can feel seen and heard as well as desired? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Tim?
Yeah, I think it's a huge topic. I'm just thinking immediately, there's various guys that come to mind who have had this as their focus over the past month or two. I'm thinking of a few guys in the Inner Circle in particular. Inner Circle is one of our higher end masterminds. And not only have they seen a massive shift in their relationship with the wife, but it's also translated to the business partners and the staff as well. And in doing so, they're seeing the staff are thanking them and very grateful for finally seeing them. One guy, in fact, was out at a concert with a few key people from his leadership team, and his sales director came up to him and thanked him again for a conversation he had with him 3 weeks prior, sharing how much it meant to him. And the idea was about cleaning mud off the glass and all that stuff, which you're familiar with. I know the listeners aren't, but maybe we'll talk about that. So the point I'm making here is everybody wants to be seen and heard as well. Yeah, for sure, your partner and a lot of the tools and insights we'll share, I imagine, are going to translate to other relationships as well.
Yeah, when you mention that, so I'm working with a guy one-on-one. I'm coaching him. I'm talking about mastery versus dabbling. And so we are perfecting the hidden motives technique, which is something we've done a lot of podcasts on, something we teach the men in much greater detail in our flagship program, the activation method. I don't only say that, guys, because some guys don't know what it is. And so I don't want guys listening to this go, what the heck is he talking about? And so one of the times his wife was away. I said, hey, look, I want you to practice this with other people. He's like, oh, okay, I'll see it. Now, this guy's got a very large business, a couple hundred employees, and he does major construction projects. I'm trying to think of how not to say exactly who he is. Major construction projects that involve government officials, cities, big cities. And so I get a message from him like, oh my gosh, man. He's like, so he was at a meeting and someone very prominent in politics, the city, was there and happened to be a woman. And he used the hidden motive technique, right? So validating her the way that we teach the men how to do this. And this woman's usually kind of cold and what have you. He's like, she started crying because she felt so seen by him. And now, this could be used for bad, right? It could be, he could usually manipulate this relationship now, but he relieved her basically, right? He collected her berries is what we talk about a lot. And I'll go into that in a second, what collecting the berries is about. But it's the idea that when you effectively communicate, specifically man to woman, but it goes both ways, men too need to be heard, then this idea that breaks down the walls and allows that person to be seen so well, especially in a marriage. We talked about in a previous episode about when marriages become passionateless, right? And people do the same routine over and over again. So going back and being able to effectively communicate allows that renewal to happen much more readily.
Yeah, it's incredible. The guy was talking about a similar position, right? He's got a few hundred employees as well. Runs an incredibly large, well, a very large company, scaling to $1 billion. And for him, he's done the same thing. He chose to do it within his leadership team in the beginning. And he's gone around, had these, let's call them clearing conversations with each of there's about 4 or 5 key people. And the impact it's had on them has just been huge. And he started to do it, not so much clearing conversations with his kids, but the validation aspect with his kids as well. And that's had a huge effect there. And then when we go to his wife and we talk about berries and other bits and pieces, he's just seeing these relationships in his life that mean so much to him just come to life in a way that he always knew they could, but didn't know how, right? Yep. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into it.
So let's dive into it.
Go for it.
So yeah, we're not taught to communicate as men, right? And so I'll set the scene that I've heard before it's more of an anthropological resonance, right? Story is if you go back in time, we haven't changed much since the old hunter-gatherers, right? We're still the same. We got better clothes maybe, or, better beer. But back then, if you were in more of a tribal situation, the men would go out and hunt. So if you and I, Tim, were going out to hunt the woolly mammoth, right? We're out there, we'd have to be very quiet, right? We can't startle the woolly mammoth. To bring it back to present time, think of a deer or something. But what we do is we just make hand signals like, hey, like we do something like that. So guys, I'm making hand signals. So if you're not watching this, you're missing out on my horrible interpretation. Go over to YouTube. You can check it out. But we'd use hand signals. We'd make grunts and small noises, one-word answers. So we didn't scare off the prey. So we could bring home the meat to the family so everybody could survive. And so the idea is, the theory is, men have evolved this way to communicate in very short, blunt reasons. We had a guy at the Alpha Reset had one-word answers was kind of the joke with everything, So guys are just like that. So when we look at women, women would go out and they'd have, say, collect berries. And we use this analogy of collecting berries. So they would go out together and they'd have babies and kids with them oftentimes. As they went through the forest, they had to be very talkative and loud for a couple of reasons. One is it would scare off snakes or other animals, so they wouldn't turn the corner, be a bear. The bear jumps them, eats them. So they're talking the whole time, and the prey, or even if it's say it's a mountain lion or back then a saber-toothed tiger, can hear them and realize it's a lot of people. Therefore, it's not easy prey and would move on. Also, it's really important for women, right? They would talk about, hey, go collect the berries, but not the red berries. Make sure you get the blueberries, not the blueberries in the big tree, but the blueberries in the bush, not the bush by the river because there's a snake there, but not that river over there, but get the blueberries that are over on this season, but don't get them in the morning because they're too tart. Get them at night, da-da-da-da-da. And so they go into these amazing details because if the woman picked the wrong berries, the whole tribe could die, right? They could be poisonous. Or if she went to the wrong time and got the berries, the acidity or the sugar level would have been different, the wrong season picking fruit. So women go into absorbent detail, right? Tons of detail when they look at them. Get a group of 5 women together talking and they talk over each other. It seems like it's madness, yet they all get it. And now you put a man who doesn't say anything and a woman together in relationship, and you wonder why there's strife. Well, they're not speaking the same language.
Yep.
And so that's different. So we talk about at TPM is collecting the woman's berries. And what that looks like, guys, is allowing her to download her day, right? So it starts off with something like, how was your day? And then keep having open-ended questions and probing until she's able to empty all of her berries. So she empties like what seems like to a man, verbal, diarrhea, vomit, if you will, or it can seem like a man, I should say. Once you understand this, it doesn't at all. It's actually fun. And then she is now free to be in her femininity and be there. And now you can have more effective communication. So you got to collect her berries. That's one part of communication. 2 is she needs to understand that you get her. This is where validation or the hidden motive technique comes in. So to effectively communicate in a partnership, right? That other person needs to understand that you understand their situation and you understand them. So if your wife comes to you and says, it's been such a long day because the kids are doing this and that, and my daughter is not listening to me or what have you. I'm making this up on the spot. She wants to know that you really get her frustrations, not just, daughter being bad, fix problem, right? That's what that's what goes through most guys' head, right? Daughter bad, fix problem, But really what she wants to be, a response like this would be a more effective communication technique. Go, oof, man, I imagine that would be horrible, being alone with the kids all day when they're acting out, not listening to you. You don't have an adult to have a real adult conversation with. And it would just be taxing to sit there and chase them around all day. You must be exhausted. right? Now she's going to be like, oh my God, he gets it. He sees me. He understands me, right? When you do that effectively, Tim, she is, and you've downloaded her berries, she is able to be so much closer to you and receptive to anything that you want to talk about.
Big time. It's funny, just going back to watching two women do this. The guy I was speaking about earlier, that's one of the things I said to him today. I want you to go and just observe how two women validate one another and collect berries. And I met with him the following week on the coaching call. And his mind was blown. He was like, "Oh my God, they're so good at it!" He just got immersed in watching these two people. And it's amazing to see, right? Because as guys, we've been surrounded by it our entire lives, but it's like this Jedi trick that's going on that we're not switched on to. But when you switch onto it and you watch them, it's like a masterclass in how to do it. It's incredible. And the other thing that came to mind as you were talking there about collecting the berries, one of the guys in the Inner Circle, Iron Man, he talks about the mistake he used to make that got his marriage into trouble, which was he would come home, his wife would go to share the berries, he'd say, no, just the headlines. Just the headlines.
I've done that before.
He now laughs at himself in hindsight, but he's like, oh, what a dumbass I was. Just the headlines. Because back then, he was thinking, she's sharing all these problems with me that I need to solve, all these complaints with me that are about me. And it's definitely not problems she wants you to solve.
Yep.
And it's not often criticisms about you either. She just needs to release that pressure valve, to your point, to relax into a feminine. So when you're able to provide the opportunity to release it, and validate, to your point, the closeness is it just brings you guys so much closer together, so much faster as well.
Yeah, it really does. That's so funny because I do that. I've done that in business too with people. And so much so Darcy, who's worked with me for 13 years now, we were talking about this the other day, it's been 13. So sometimes I'll come home, but when talking to her, I'll be like, hey, she'll ask me about like, oh, how was, the build out? And I'll be like, cool. I'll start talking. I'll realize Darcy's a woman. Which is not hard to realize, but in conversation, I'm like, do you want the meta or the meadow? What the meadow is the berries, the details, or do you want just the rough snippet? 100% of the time, she wants the details. She wants to know what was it like? There was smoke in the air? How smoky was it? Right? Like all of those little crisp details. Feminine women crave them. It's not that they want them, they friggin' crave them. And as men, so that's a business situation where I'm talking to this person. Darcy's like a sister to me, and she's just somebody that I know. And other women, I get to remember, okay, cool. It doesn't have to be the headlines or bullet points. Mm-hmm. There's time for them, right? Sometimes I'm just like, no, Darcy, just give me the headlines. Just give me the bullet points. I don't need to know the details. And go from there. And you can do that with your wife too sometimes, but for effectively communicating, you want to really understand what it is she wants and how she wants it delivered.
Yeah, like you said, you can do it sometimes, right? If that's the exception and not the norm, I think she'll get it because there'll be enough deposits in that bank account
for sure,
where you can where you can take it. But yeah, the other one, don't know if it's the right time to share this piece or not, but the idea of cleaning mud off the glass.
Yeah.
So what, I'll choose that guy again, who you know very well. So what he realized was that he had let mud build up on the glass between him and, let's just say, sales director. So the idea is mud on the glass, there's two people, there's a piece of glass between these two people, and at the beginning the glass is clear and those two people can see each other very clearly. And then over time, as time goes by and resentments build up and things go unsaid and things go unfelt, emotions go unprocessed, resentment builds up. And with each bit of resentment, it's a bit of mud that gets flicked on the glass. And over time, as that continues to happen, eventually you can't see the other person because there's so much mud on the glass. They're still there. They're still the other person. However, your view of them is tainted. Now, what this guy chose to do with his sales director, because he said, hey, look, I get to have a conversation with him. Okay, well, what's going on? Why did you get to have a conversation? Well, I've been avoiding saying certain things. I've been honest with him. So what we came to was the idea of him sharing this concept of mud on the glass and just really owning his side of the street and saying, I'll say his name is Doug. Hey,
That's a good name.
hey, Doug, I want to just own my side of the street here. Over the past few months, I've allowed some mud to build up on the glass between you and I. And what that has meant is that I think it's tainting our relationship. I've not been honest with you as a leader. I could have done a better job of holding a space for you and I so that we were honest. And I didn't make up stories, which I did, honestly, and I'm sorry for doing that. And it's unfair. I shouldn't have done that. It didn't set you up for success. And if you're open to it, I'd love the opportunity to clean that mud off the glass because you're important to me. Our relationship is important to me outside of work. You matter to me. And inside of work, I want you to succeed as well. So would you be open to having that conversation? To which the guy said, yeah, because obviously the leader is going to him and saying, hey, I've not been a good leader by hiding things, essentially. Shares the idea of mud on the glass, wanting to clean it off, but then also more importantly, because you're important to me. Right? Outside of work, you're important to me. Our relationship's important to me. And inside of work, I want you to thrive and I want to set you up for success. The guy said yes. He went on to share the idea of mud on the glass and shared how he had contributed to mud being on the glass and what he wanted to do to remove it. To which the sales director then shared how he had put mud on the glass and what he would do to remove it. And they went through this great conversation, essentially wiped the mud off the glass, which had them feel very connected. And it impacted the sales director so much so, like I said, at the concert, granted there'd been a little bit of alcohol, but that often reveals some of the truth even further, right? For this guy that came up, not too much alcohol by any means, who was incredibly touched by this. And he said, no one's ever connected with me in that way before. Just thank you for providing a space for us to be able to talk like that. I feel like you really care about me. And he said ever since that conversation, that guy's just been going above and beyond. He's not done it to manipulate him. So he goes above and beyond. That's just an added benefit, right?
Sure.
Yeah, when people feel seen. He's done it with a few other key people too.
Yeah. I mean, so we do this for men. We teach men how to do a version of this in their marriage. We call it the clean slate method. And you're wiping the slate clean. So you can do this, a version of this. You can do micro clean slates, kind of like we are talking about here. And so for the mud on the glass idea, guys, you did a very good descriptor of it, but I also want the guys to understand what when we say mud on the glass, what we're looking at is imagine there's a plane of glass between you and the other person. So in this example, we'll use your wife. If there's a plane of glass between you and your wife, then little indiscretions happen like, she was too loud doing the dishes while I was trying to take a nap. A little bit of mud gets flicked onto that glass. And then, maybe it's another indiscretion happens that you do. Maybe you're snoring at night or maybe you miss date night because of a meeting. Then a little mud gets thrown on the glass on her side. And over time, what happens is you might try to do a fake apology, which is like smearing the mud, trying to wipe it off, but smearing it. And then you can't see each other. So there's no transparency in the relationship. And so that's what Tim's talking about here, going through it. I know you're looking at me nodding, but because you know it. And sometimes it's hard to talk about topics that you and I both know so well and explain them to somebody else when we're looking at each other. So you want to do this in your marriage too. It's very difficult. It's one of the first things that we teach the men how to do. You want to do it effectively. That's the hard thing. And that's why for the activation method, it's very intimate groups with coaching. So the guys get direct individual feedback on how to remove the mud on the glass. Because if I go, and my wife and I have mud on the glass, and I go to apologize to her, or I try to clean up or try to bring passion back in, she can't see me clearly and I can't see her, and it's ineffective. So you need to have that glass clean so you can move forward. So using that with kind of the hidden motives technique, which you talked about earlier, and collecting the berries is a very effective way to, one, be able to see each other, two, your wife now feels seen, heard, and desired. She feels like you understand her better than anybody in the world. And when your wife feels like you understand her better than anybody in the world, there is nothing she won't do for you, right? Nothing, or to you. And so you want to make sure that's happening. Two, if you love your partner, or you love the people you're around, or people you work with, it behooves you to allow them to be seen It behooves you out of a place of love to allow them to, understand, be understood. Like, hey, they come into an environment where they're choosing to work, and that the people around them, the leaders, the bosses, or coworkers, understand what their situation is, understand what they're going through, understand them as a human, right? We're human beings, and we forget that sometimes, especially in relationship.
Yeah, and I think there's another point here that is related, especially when I speak to the guys, and they struggle to attune often and switch out of work mode and into home mode, if we call it that. So the alpha decompression has been a real key for a lot of these guys. It's helped to get them out of that problem-solving mode because, again, if you're walking through the door, and even you might be going through all this and you might be emptying the berries and validating and so on, but what we've seen happen with the guys is after a couple of months of doing that, if they become a bit complacent and they walk through the door and they're still thinking about work, and they then start to just regurgitate the same things they've been saying for a few weeks, it becomes inauthentic.
Yep.
And the wife catches it and she's like, "You're reading from a script? Like, what are you doing? She just susses it out real quick. And it shocks the guy. And that's because he's not there. He's not connecting to her. He's not attuning himself to the environment or to the situation. So one of the ways the guys do this is by doing the alpha decompression. It's a routine they do at the end of the workday. Guys do it very differently. They could take a cold shower. They could go for a walk. They could journal. They could do some breath work. It's a little bit different for every guy. It depends on how much time they have. Some guys do it on the ride home from the office to getting home. If you work at home, that isn't going to happen. You do it by hitting the sign as you leave your office, right? Switches your state. But I think it's a key piece to this, that state management, so you can attune to it and actually connect with whoever it is, in this instance, your wife. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, it does. Let's summarize a few of these things because we've kind of gone all over the place here, as we tend to do. When we talk about effective communication, especially in a relationship, I think the first step is validating, right? It's not really the first step, but it's the easiest first step is going into validating. And that's really trying to get into the world of the other person that you're communicating with, understanding what their point of view could be. So there's empathy there, but also making them feel seen and heard, right? Making them feel seen and heard. That's step one, in my opinion. If you can clean the glass first, that's the better way of doing it. But you need a lot of training to do that, in my opinion. What happens is, men come, they'll try it. We have something. If you go to thepowerfulman.com/clean slate, there's a free training and downloading on how to do this. So for men that are interested, guys, you can go out and actually get this done. Go to thepowerfulman.com/clean slate. I got to remember where it's located. And there's a free training. There's a training on there, as well as you can actually learn how to write a clean slate letter and get feedback on that directly. So go over and do that. That's the best way. Individual coaching is by far the best way because we're guys. The last clean slate letter I read that a client sent me, Tim, he spent a lot of time on it. It was horrible. There was no way I wouldn't let him deliver it. We went through 5 revisions before it actually, so he could get the result he wanted. So you want to do that, and then go into the hidden motives technique, and then collect berries. If you can do those 3 things, simple, right? Collect berries, hidden motives technique, clean the mud off the glass. Clean slate, letter is by far clean slate method, the best way of doing it. If you can do those 3 things, your communication will be so effective.
Yeah.
Your leadership will be effective, and your life will be so much friggin' easier.
Big time. Big time.
So, gentlemen, as we always say in the moment of insight, take massive action. I'm curious on what you're going to take action on. This is your shot. Don't go from podcast to podcast, YouTube show to YouTube show. This is your shot to actually take action and make some changes. Tim and I gave you some resources. Make sure you do them. They're totally free. We're giving this to you guys. We've done tons of other shows and episodes on these subjects as well. So you can go over to thepowerfulman.com. I think it's shows or podcasts. Click the link. You guys could figure it out. And you'll see a ton of episodes so you can keep getting in here. Remember, mastery is by far better than dabbling and always will be. Take care. All right, guys, that's a wrap for this episode. But as I always say, in the moment of insight, take massive action. You see, there are two types of men that listen to a podcast like this. Those that go on from one podcast or show to another, just hoping things are going to change and realizing that they're going to be in the same place month after month, year after year. You see, I was this guy, so I completely get it. You may just not be ready. But there's also a second man that listens to a show just like this. And this is a guy who takes massive action so they can shorten the learning curve, compress time, and get results to be the wolf. See, wolf is an acronym for wise, open, loving, and fierce. Now, ask yourself, which one am I? And just be honest with yourself there. And there's no judgment on my end, but if you're ready to move from deactivated deer mode, which is defend, excuse, explain, react, to activated wolf, wise, open, loving, and fierce, then go over to thepowerfulman.com/grow and go there now. In fact, I'll make it super easy for you. I will even put the link right in the description here so you can just click it and go over there now to learn more. Guys, in the moment of insight, take massive action. Go from deactivated to activated because like I said, life is too short for average. And I'll see you on the next episode.